The moment I stepped across the threshold of my parents' house, I felt an almost electric tension hanging in the air, like the heavy pause before a storm breaks. My mother's grin was stretched a little too wide as she hurried to take my coat, while my father's handshake carried an odd firmness, a silent message I couldn't quite decipher. My sister Autumn practically buzzed with a strange excitement, her gaze bouncing between our parents with a secretive gleam I had known since we were children. "Elowen, sweetheart, so glad you're here," my mother said warmly as she guided me insistently toward the dining room, her hand pressing firmly against my back. The dining table was set as if for a celebration, polished to perfection. Fine china gleamed under the light, crystal glasses sparkled as though rarely touched, and a bouquet of freshly cut flowers brightened the center. Whatever this gathering was about, it had been carefully staged. I slid into my familiar chair, across from Autumn, her grin wide and mischievous, the same one she wore when she was only 8 years old. Seconds before I landed on a whoopee cushion she had sneakily hidden. My father began carving the roast beef with his usual steady precision, while my mother passed around mashed potatoes, green beans, and those soft Parker House rolls I had adored since childhood. Then I noticed a manila folder tucked neatly beside my father's plate, its edge peeking out beneath his folded napkin. My stomach tensed. "How's the clinic going?" my mother asked with a brightness that felt forced. "Still putting in all those wild hours?" I kept my response short. "Business is steady," though I couldn't stop myself from noticing my father's quick glance toward the folder. "We've actually grown our patient load by about 20% this quarter," I added. Autumn gave a quick, knowing snort. "So many patients, yet your waiting room is still so tiny. Someone ought to modernize the way you run things." The pieces began fitting together in my mind, creating a picture I didn't want to see. My father cleared his throat and placed his fork against the china with a deliberate clink. "Elowen, we've been thinking about the future of your clinic." The bite of food I had been chewing turned dry as sawdust. My mother jumped in seamlessly, almost as though they had practiced this moment. "Family businesses thrive with family leadership, darling. Your father and I believe it's time to make sure Healing Hands remains truly within the family." I forced myself to answer carefully. "It isn't a family business. I built it with our support." My father countered smoothly, reaching toward the folder. "And now Autumn has drafted an excellent proposal that would help everyone." My sister straightened proudly, her voice eager. "I've put together a full business plan to step in as your practice manager. I'd take care of all the boring paperwork, so you can dedicate yourself to treating patients." Her eyes shone as she leaned closer, her tone confident. "All I'm asking for is a 25% share of the profits. That's more than fair considering how much I'll expand things." My heartbeat drummed in my ears. This wasn't dinner. This was a trap. Suddenly, old memories broke through working exhausting double shifts in the hospital cafeteria during physical therapy school, sending money home so Autumn could make it through her first year at college while I lived off ramen in a cramped apartment filled with salvaged furniture. Sleepless nights studying after 14-hour rotations. The staggering $187,000 in student debt that still drained me every month. Steadying my breath, I said evenly, "I already have a clinic manager." My mother brushed the statement aside with a wave. "But Autumn has the people skills. Don't you recall how she charmed Dr. Wilson at your opening? He barely noticed you." I remembered all too well, just as I remembered my father's dismissive laugh at graduation, when my academic achievements were overshadowed by his proud photos of Autumn in my cap and gown. I thought of last summer when Autumn had helped at the front desk, offering unauthorized discounts to her sorority friends, leaving me scrambling to soothe angry patients. After botched scheduling, drove some to wait hours, and others to walk away completely. "May I see this plan you've put together?" I asked finally. Nodding toward the folder, my father slid it across the table, with the smugness of a man convinced the decision was already settled. "It's been prepared by my attorney," he said smoothly. All that's missing is your signature. We can start tomorrow. Autumn clapped with delight. I already have plans for redecorating your office. I deliberately set down my glass of water, every movement measured. Slowly, I reached for my own briefcase resting quietly at my side. Before we take this discussion further, I said with calm authority, there's something I need you all to see. The silence thickened as I unlocked the case with a crisp click that sounded almost like a gunshot in the charged atmosphere. My father's confident expression faltered as I drew out a sleek leather portfolio, the one I had bought as a reward after winning the Denver sports medicine contract, a symbol of success earned without their aid. What is this? My father asked, his voice carrying an unfamiliar tremor. My mother's nervous glance darted between him and Autumn as her fingers twisted the edge of her napkin. Autumn's smile, so self-assured moments earlier, began to crumble. I laid out my documents on the table with the same care I applied to treatment plans, aligning each page perfectly. 3 weeks ago, I signed a management services agreement with Colorado Healthcare Partners, I said, tapping the top sheet where their bold corporate logo claimed the letterhead. They will be handling every administrative responsibility of Healing Hands moving forward. My father's brows knitted together as he reached for the stack of papers, his expression hardening. You cannot make decisions like this without consulting your family. I slid another document across the polished wood, my tone steady. Actually, I can. I've marked section 4.3 for you. It clearly states that no family member can hold a management role unless the entire board approves unanimously. The board is myself and 2 independent partners from Colorado Healthcare Partners. Autumn's cheeks burned red as though the truth had slapped her across the face. You set this up on purpose, she accused sharply. I held her gaze without flinching, the weight of years between us sharpening my voice. I made a professional choice, I replied, refusing to blink first, one based on experience and on the consequences of letting the past repeat itself. From my leather portfolio, I withdrew another folder and placed it firmly on the table. Inside was a thick stack of patient complaints, neatly arranged by date, collected from the summer she had worked at my clinic. The volume of pages alone told its own story. These records, I said quietly, show 15 scheduling errors that double-booked rooms, 23 unauthorized discounts, 8 of which were handed to your sorority friends, and 31 billing mistakes that nearly triggered an insurance audit. My mother stretched a trembling hand toward mine but stopped, short, her eyes pleading. Elowen, darling, everyone makes mistakes when they're still learning. Her voice quivered with forced sympathy. I rose slowly to my feet, towering over the table and over the people who had always spoken down to me. These weren't innocent learning mistakes. They were reckless choices made by someone who thought the rules simply didn't apply. I drew out another sheet, this one prepared meticulously by my accountant. It was a cold ledger of generosity exploited. $42,000 worth of treatments, given freely to my own family over the past 3 years. My father's shoulder rehabilitation, my mother's plantar fasciitis therapy, and Autumn's sports massages before her vacations at the beach. For a moment, the silence at the table felt like victory itself. Their faces, once confident and entitled, shifted to stunned disbelief, the certainty draining away. And while I was covering all your medical expenses, I continued, my voice rising with the force of memory, I was eating instant noodles to keep up with my student loans. I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria to fund Autumn's first year at college. And when you told me you couldn't pay for both our educations, I slept on treatment tables because rent and malpractice insurance together were impossible. I locked eyes with my father until he looked away. My phone buzzed. A message from my clinic manager lit up the screen. Did you tell them yet? The timing was perfect. A reminder that I was no longer standing alone. Then I noticed a manila folder tucked neatly beside my father's plate, its edge peeking out beneath his folded napkin. My stomach tensed. How's the clinic going? My mother asked with a brightness that felt forced. Still putting in all those wild hours? I kept my response short. Business is steady. Though I couldn't stop myself from noticing my father's quick glance toward the folder. We've actually grown our patient load by about 20% this quarter, I added. My mentor warned me years ago family and business never mix. I should have listened sooner. Carefully, I began sliding my documents back into the portfolio, one page after another in exact order. The deliberate ritual calmed me. Much like organizing supplies before a difficult patient session. We can negotiate, my father said at last, his voice stripped of authority, sounding more like a businessman losing ground. 20% instead of 25, perhaps a trial period. And the sound of my portfolio snapping shut echoed louder than his offer. My clinic is not your personal bank account, I said coldly. It is my life's work. My mother's hand flew to her throat in the dramatic gesture she had perfected over years of conflict. I never imagined you'd value money over family, she whispered. The accusation hung in the air, exposing exactly what had always been wrong in their world. In their eyes, my success was never mine to hold, it existed to feed their convenience. I'm not choosing business over family, I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. I am choosing boundaries over exploitation. Autumn shoved her chair back so hard it scraped the hardwood. You've always been so theatrical, Elowen, pretending you built everything alone when we've always supported you. Supported me? I arched an eyebrow. Was that during my graduation, when Dad was too busy photographing you in my cap and gown? Or was it at my clinic's grand opening, when Mom told Dr. Wilson I was just the medical face of the business? Perhaps it was on my 12th birthday when I got a card while you received a shiny new bicycle? Or maybe it was the night of my valedictorian speech, when no one came because you had a cold? The memories surged like water forced through cracks, unstoppable and raw. I zipped the briefcase closed with finality. Your support has always vanished when it mattered most. My father stood abruptly. His height once intimidating but now hollow. You've changed, Elowen. Success has made you hard, unfeeling. I met his stare without blinking. No, I said softly. Success has finally made me visible. And you have no idea how to treat a daughter you can no longer ignore. Dumb stain. I lifted my briefcase from the chair, surprised by how weightless it felt after years of carrying invisible burdens. For the first time since I walked into this house, I drew in a deep breath that didn't sting my chest. I'll show myself out. I turned toward the doorway, my hand already on the handle, then paused. Oh, and beginning next month, any medical treatments provided to family will be billed at the regular rate. Our charity program is intended for those who cannot afford care, not for those who simply choose not to pay. Behind me came the sharp sound of my mother gasping, my father's muttered curse under his breath, and Autumn's overly dramatic sob. For the first time, though, their familiar chorus of reactions didn't drag me back into that exhausting rhythm of constant appeasement. Stepping outside into the cool evening air, my phone buzzed again with a message from my clinic manager. We're all behind you. For the very first time in my life, I truly let myself believe those words. Later that night, alone in my apartment, memories came uninvited. My 12th birthday had fallen on an ordinary Tuesday in April, a day remembered more for the math test I aced than for the lonely card leaning against my cereal bowl at breakfast. Just 2 weeks later, Autumn celebrated her 10th birthday with a sparkling teal bicycle, streamers fluttering from the handlebars, and a wicker basket perfect for collecting little treasures. I stood on the porch and watched as she wobbled around the driveway, our parents clapping joyfully with every turn. Elowen, take a picture of your sister, Dad called, tossing his camera toward me. This is a big milestone. I dutifully angled the viewfinder, catching her beaming smile as sunlight caught her hair and my father steadied the seat, while Mom waved her handkerchief like she was sending off royalty. That evening, while drying dishes beside Mom, I asked quietly, Do you remember when I got my first bike? She froze for a moment, sponge midair, then finally said, You were such a practical child, Elowen. You always wanted books instead. But the truth was I had circled bicycles in catalogs for 3 straight years, hoping one day I would get one too. Years later, high school graduation brought me academic honors, the role of valedictorian, a science medal, and a full scholarship to Colorado State. The auditorium buzzed with flowers and proud applause from other families, while mine arrived 7 minutes after my speech, slipping into the back row just as I sat down. Traffic was terrible, my mother whispered afterward, empty-handed. But we made it in time for Autumn's recital tonight. You'll come, won't you? That pattern followed me into college. My dean's list certificates were mailed home and left unopened for weeks on the kitchen counter, while I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria to survive. By the time I graduated from physical therapy school, the cycle was too familiar. I stood alone in the courtyard until Autumn appeared, waving as she darted through the crowd. There you are, she said, snatching my mortarboard. Dad wants photos of me in this. For 20 long minutes, I watched as my parents proudly photographed her in my cap and gown. Their backs turned to me while I clutched my honors cords and diploma case. Later, Dad handed the cap back without meeting my eyes. Book smarts don't build clinics, Elowen, he muttered. 4 years passed, and I found myself hunched over my laptop at midnight, the clinic dark, except for my office lamp. Loan statements glowed on the screen, $187,000 still owed, monthly payments larger than my rent. That same night, I had just transferred $1,200 to Autumn to cover her latest housing crisis after her 4th job change in only 2 years. My own apartment was furnished with discarded pieces found on curbs. A wobbly coffee table, a sofa with a smell I couldn't scrub out. My stomach growled in the silence. That morning, the bank manager's words had cut deep. Without a co-signer or additional collateral, Miss Bennett, we cannot approve this expansion loan. I nodded politely, tucking the rejection slip into my bag beside several others. I didn't mention that my parents had refused to help co-sign, but had purchased Autumn a brand new car just weeks earlier because she needed reliable transportation for interviews. That night, exhausted, I curled up on the vinyl treatment table in my clinic, covering myself with a thin patient blanket after 16 hours of back-to-back appointments, followed by endless insurance paperwork. When the cleaning crew arrived at 5 in the morning, they found me still clutching spreadsheets. 6 months later, when Healing Hands finally opened in its own space instead of a rented room, my parents stopped by for only 15 minutes, squeezing the visit between Autumn's bridal shower and a dinner reservation. It's nice, Mom remarked, glancing at her watch. Like a real doctor's office. Dad studied my framed credentials on the wall and said, Just remember, it's always about the people, not the degrees. They left before the small reception began, missing the champagne toast from my 3-person staff and the ribbon-cutting photo taken for the local business journal. The summer that Autumn decided to help at the front desk quickly turned into one of the most difficult professional stretches of my life. Her sorority friends were handed unauthorized discounts, while loyal patients had their appointments canceled or moved without warning. Insurance forms sat neglected in drawers until I discovered them, crumpled and incomplete, during late-night cleanups. They were so boring, Autumn shrugged when I confronted her. Besides, they're just old people with Medicare. It's not like they have anywhere important to be. After she left, I spent weeks personally phoning each patient, apologizing and rebuilding trust, one by one. The turning point arrived unexpectedly in a tense meeting with the regional representative from Blue Shield. The stern woman across from me had rejected 3 consecutive claims, her expression unreadable. Miss Bennett, your documentation fails to meet our standards, she began. Before she could finish, I slid a neatly prepared folder across the desk, cutting into her rehearsed dismissal. These are revised protocols I designed to address your exact requirements. I have carefully cross-referenced every single treatment code against your most recent manual. Her eyebrows lifted as she flipped through the pages covered with meticulous notes. You prepared all this yourself? She asked, clearly surprised. Every evening for 3 straight weeks, I replied. Her assessment was blunt but honest. Most providers either argue endlessly or simply give up. Just 3 days later, the insurance company reversed course and approved our entire backlog of claims. Within a few short months, physician referrals began to rise steadily as word spread about our unmatched documentation and strong patient outcomes. After nearly 2 exhausting years, our clinic finally recorded its first profitable month. I sat in front of my accounting software late into the night, checking the numbers again and again before I dared to let myself believe them. No one was there to celebrate with me, yet for the first time the silence did not feel like abandonment, it felt like strength. That night I understood something vital. My invisibility had quietly transformed into my greatest weapon. While my family was busy admiring Autumn's charm and social flair, I had been building something solid in the quiet shadows where no one cared to look. The skills honed through years of self-reliance, discipline, determination, exactness, and strategy now formed the very backbone of my growing clinic. Ellie Morgan, my trusted clinic manager, proved this when she turned down a far more lucrative hospital job in order to remain with Healing Hands. They don't value people the way you do, she told me, tearing her offer letter in half. I've worked in healthcare for 3 decades, Elowen. What you're creating here is extraordinary. The difference from my family gatherings was striking, where my input had so often been brushed aside or ignored. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the phone rang with a call from the medical director of Denver Rehabilitation Center. We've been studying your outcome data, she said briskly. 2,000 patients. Our orthopedic department would like to explore a specialized treatment partnership. Live. That evening, our small team gathered at the clinic after hours. Not for frantic rescheduling, but for celebration. There were 9 of us now instead of the original 3, raising plastic cups over a grocery store cake. To Elowen, Ellie said proudly, who saw possibilities where everyone else saw limitations. Later, alone in the quiet, I carefully lifted my first business license from its frame, running my fingers along the embossed seal. Tomorrow it would hang again in our expanded reception area. A reminder that sometimes being overlooked allows you to build foundations no one expects will endure. 6 weeks after the confrontation at my parents' house, I sat in my new corner office with a sweeping view of Denver's skyline, though I positioned my desk so I faced the treatment floor instead of the city. Through the glass wall I watched Meredith patiently guide Mrs. Hoffman through her recovery exercises after a stroke. Her quiet persistence reflected everything I hoped my clinic would stand for. Something my family had never truly grasped about healing. The contrast between my simple, second-hand office furniture and the state-of-the-art therapy equipment on the treatment floor was intentional. Patients deserved the best technology. I had learned to thrive with a basic chair and an old desk, channeling every extra dollar into the areas that truly mattered. I straightened the original Healing Hands sign hanging on my wall, salvaged from our previous space when we grew from 3 treatment rooms into 15. From a single therapist, our team had expanded to 15 professionals who shared my vision of patient-centered care. My phone vibrated again with yet another call from Mom. I silenced it without reading, knowing it would echo yesterday's and the day before's. Just checking in, honey, with a carefully hidden inquiry about clinic finances or a mention of Autumn's latest jobless crisis. The calls had multiplied after I declined their dinner invitations 6 weeks in a row. Mom rotated between guilt, "We never see you anymore," and feigned interest in business. "Have you thought about offering discounts to senior communities?" Dad even tried contacting my accountant directly last week, though thankfully she had been alerted by my warning. Their most desperate attempt came just yesterday, when Autumn appeared unannounced in the middle of our busiest afternoon, clutching a folder filled with brilliant marketing ideas. that somehow required her full-time employment. Mark, my steady front desk manager, followed every protocol. He offered her a seat in the waiting room and called me immediately. I did not interrupt my patient's session. That evening, the warm sunlight streamed across my desk as I opened my laptop. On the screen sat the email I had drafted, deleted, and rewritten 14 times. It was precise, calm, and necessary. To my family, as I have said before, after long consideration, I am establishing firm professional boundaries regarding Healing Hands therapy. The clinic will remain closed to family employment or management influence. All treatments will be billed at the standard rates. Any business discussions will be handled only by my management team. I remain willing to rebuild our personal relationship. Separate from the business, we can no longer mix. My finger hovered over the send button as the door opened and Carol, my clinic manager, stepped in carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Thought you might need a little backup," Carol said softly as she placed a steaming cup of coffee beside my laptop. I saw the social media post. I raised an eyebrow. Without another word, she slid her phone across my desk. There it was, my mother's Facebook profile, showing a glossy photo from Healing Hands opening day 3 years earlier. She stood beside me, one arm draped casually around my shoulders, projecting the rare illusion of support that I now knew had been more performance than truth. The caption beneath the picture read, "So proud of my daughter Elowen's vision with Healing Hands therapy. We've always believed in her healing touch. Proud mama, family business." The words felt like acid on my tongue. The timestamp showed it had been posted barely 20 minutes earlier. "Notice the hashtag?" Carol asked carefully. "Family business." The phrase curdled in my mind. With a steady breath, I pressed send on the email I had drafted. "They've never contributed a single dollar to this place, never given a single hour of work, never believed it would survive until it did," I said. Carol nodded. "The community sees it too. Dr. Reynolds brought it up last week when he referred that complicated shoulder case. He said he chooses your clinic because you built something authentic, not something handed down." I looked up, surprised. She tapped the frame on the wall holding my first business license. "He also said he admired how you always credit your team instead of boasting about your background." I thought of last Friday's staff meeting, when I had publicly attributed our success to the team's relentless dedication rather than my own vision. Then I recalled catching Autumn's friend Kimberly in the waiting room, her phone angled suspiciously as though recording. That memory jolted another thought. "The scholarship funds approved," I said, pulling up the confirmation email. "Starting next semester, we'll support 2 physical therapy students who can demonstrate true financial need." Carol smiled warmly. "Your mother dismissed that as wasteful charity when she overheard us talking." "Which is exactly why it matters," I answered, stretching my tired shoulders. "Any updates from the accountant about their last attempt?" Carol sighed. "Your father tried sweet talk, then pressure. Denise told him plainly that further contact could lead to harassment charges. And he finally left." Carol's expression softened as she reached into her pocket. "There's more. Your mother came by during lunch. When I explained you were volunteering at the children's hospital, she left this." She handed me an envelope with my name written in my mother's elegant cursive. Inside, on tear-stained paper, were pleading words about family misunderstandings and missing her daughter. The last line begged for a family meeting at their house, on their terms. As I absorbed the letter, my phone chimed with a text from Autumn. "Miss you, big sis, can we talk? Just us?" Carol watched quietly as I processed it all. "Your father's letter arrived yesterday too," she added, pulling out another envelope. "Formal. Suggesting mediation with his lawyer present." I laughed, but without humor. "So the tide has turned, their friends are starting to ask questions. The community is beginning to notice the cracks between their claims and reality." Through the window, I watched two of my therapists, both hired from disadvantaged backgrounds, guiding patients with skill and compassion, embodying the culture I had fought to build. The afternoon light illuminated the expanded treatment floor, every square foot a testament to my vision, my sweat, my persistence, all the things my family had once dismissed as impossible. "What will you tell them?" Carol asked gently. I slipped the note into my desk drawer, where I kept every manipulative message neatly documented. "When they're ready for a relationship that doesn't depend on exploiting me," I said firmly. "Then I'll listen. Until that day, my focus is protecting what I've built." Beyond my office window, I noticed a familiar face, one of Autumn's sorority sisters who had once taken advantage of unauthorized discounts. Today she sat waiting, insurance card in hand, her expression respectful rather than entitled. The facade was collapsing. 2 weeks later, on a crisp morning scented with fresh coffee and possibility, I arrived at Cornerstone Café 20 minutes early. I had chosen this place deliberately neutral territory, noisy enough for privacy yet open enough to avoid isolation. Selecting a corner table with a clear view of both entrances, I settled into the chair facing the door. Old instincts lingered. I still wanted to see them coming. I placed my leather portfolio carefully in front of me, its weight grounding. Inside were neatly organized texts, emails, and financial records chronicling our tangled history. This evidence wasn't collected out of spite, but with the same meticulous care I used for treatment plans, ensuring nothing could be denied. "Would you like something while you wait?" the barista asked, smiling kindly with her notepad ready. "Just black coffee, please," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Minutes later, the mug arrived, steam rising like the anticipation in my chest. Through the window, I saw them approaching from the parking lot. Dad's shoulders were rigid under his golf polo. Mom fiddled nervously with her pearl necklace, and Autumn's confident stride was betrayed by nervous glances toward them. They wore coordinated outfits in pale cream and tan, trying to project unity. The bell over the cafe door jingled as they stepped inside. The moment they spotted me, I caught the subtle shifts: Dad's jaw tightening, Mom's smile freezing, Autumn's eyes narrowing at the sight of the portfolio. "Elowen, sweetheart," Mom cooed, reaching down for a hug. I remained seated, forcing her into an awkward shoulder pat. "This is cozy," Dad remarked as he sat across from me. "We would have preferred dinner at home. Family matters should stay private." "This isn't just a family matter," I replied, tapping the leather case between us. "This is about my business," I said firmly. Autumn slid gracefully into the chair beside our father, her perfume so strong it nearly drowned out the rich aroma of coffee. "We brought muffins from that bakery you love," she offered sweetly, pushing a crumpled paper bag toward me. I didn't reach for it. A waitress appeared, took their order with the speed of long practice, and disappeared again. The moment she was gone, Dad leaned forward, clasping his hands tightly together on the table, his expression severe. "Blood is thicker than water, Elowen," he said, his voice dipping into the commanding tone he once used whenever I missed curfew as a teenager. "Family stands united, especially in business." Mom stretched across the table, giving my wrist a gentle squeeze. "We've always been so proud of you, darling," she insisted. "Your father and I tell everyone about our brilliant daughter, the doctor." "Arting. Physical therapist," I corrected automatically, but Autumn jumped in quickly, surprising me with rare accuracy. "Doctor of physical therapy," she said, before seamlessly sliding into a speech she had clearly rehearsed. "I know I came on too strong last time, so I've drafted a new idea." She pulled a sleek tablet from her purse with a practiced flourish. "It would be a consulting arrangement instead of management," she explained brightly. 3 days a week, focused on boosting social media, expanding corporate outreach, building brand presence. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitterness strengthen me. "Before we talk about any proposals, there's something you should hear," I said. "At the Hendersons' anniversary party last weekend, they asked me an interesting question." At the mention of family friends, all 3 of them stiffened in unison. They congratulated me on our supposed family partnership and asked when you officially joined my practice. I opened my leather portfolio and revealed neatly organized documents. They seemed shocked when I told them you were not partners in my business. Dad's face reddened instantly. We never said that. Calmly, I slid across printed screenshots of their Facebook posts, each one describing our clinic as a family venture. There were also text messages from the Wilsons, asking about the family business Mom had mentioned at Bridge Club. Mom's face drained of color. Elowen. Those were just expressions of pride, she whispered. Is that so? I asked, withdrawing another sheet. This is an email from Dr. Reynolds, wondering why Dad contacted him about possible partnership opportunities in my clinic. Nah. The silence that followed stretched long and heavy, broken only by the hiss of the espresso machine and quiet chatter from nearby tables. You've been spying on us, Autumn said, her voice tinged with betrayal, as though I had broken their trust. I met her gaze directly. Not spying, paying attention. The same focused attention I used to build this clinic while you were busy telling your sorority sisters they could get free treatments. Dad tried to regain control. We're straying from the point. We're here to talk about Autumn's role. My voice was calm, steady. Autumn will have no role in my clinic. Neither will you, nor Mom. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Elowen, after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done? I countered, pulling out a spreadsheet. Here is an itemized record of free treatments I've provided this family over the last 3 years. Market value $42,735. And here are the personal loans I gave Autumn in my first 2 years of practice, when I could barely afford rent. $16,450 still unpaid. Autumn's face twisted in disbelief. You told me those were gifts, she cried. I said we'd settle it later, I replied evenly. And later is now. For the first time, Dad's polished businessman mask slipped. You can't possibly expect repayment after all we've tie-ins. After all you've what? I cut in, my voice level but sharp. After you skipped my doctoral hooding ceremony to attend Autumn's sorority fundraiser? After you told Dr. Wilson I was just playing at business until I found a husband? After you dismissed my clinic's opening as just another job? I pressed my palms flat on the table, anchoring myself. Here are my terms for any future relationship. First, my business decisions are mine alone. No suggestions, no interference, no contacting my colleagues. Second, any treatments for family will be billed at full standard rates. Third, you will stop referring to yourselves as partners or owners in my business. Mom's carefully practiced composure shattered, tears gathering in her eyes, real ones this time, not the performance she often staged. You can't mean this, she whispered brokenly. We're family. Family respects boundaries, I said with quiet force. Family celebrates achievements instead of trying to steal them. Wine. Dad's expression darkened with anger. This is ridiculous. We never thought you would actually succeed alone. We were only trying to secure your future. The truth slipped from his lips so naturally. He didn't even notice what he had admitted. For all these years, through all my sacrifice, they had never truly believed in me. Autumn's facade finally crumbled. It's not fair, she hissed. You get everything, the respect, the title, the business. What about me? I'm stuck in a cubicle while you play hero in your precious clinic. And there it was, the raw envy that had always fueled her charm and manipulation, stripped bare for the first time. With a decisive snap, I closed my portfolio and rose to my feet. I built everything I have, I said, my voice steady and final, while carrying this family emotionally and financially on my back. I'm not pretending at anything anymore, and I refuse to stay invisible. My voice didn't waver. I placed exact change for my coffee on the table and rose to leave. Behind me, I caught the faint sound of my mother's stifled sobs, my father's angry whisper aimed at Autumn. and the scrape of chairs shifting, but I didn't turn around. For the very first time, I was walking forward without glancing back for their approval. With each step I took away from that café, the heavy weight of their expectations seemed to slide off my shoulders. By the time I reached the street, I stood taller than I had when I walked in. Months later, I found myself standing at the picture window of my expanded clinic, watching the late afternoon sunlight scatter gold across the Denver skyline. 1 full year had passed since that infamous Sunday dinner, and the reflection in the glass mirrored the change inside me. "Dr. Bennett, your 3 o'clock is ready." Melissa, my lead therapist, said as she appeared at my side with clipboard in hand. "It's Mrs. Abernathy's last session." I smiled warmly, genuine gratitude swelling in my chest. "Perfect timing," I answered. The waiting room buzzed with energy. So different from the cramped little space where my dream had first taken root. Now patients relaxed in comfortable chairs beneath framed certificates, recognizing our community service, proudly hung beside my very first business license. Our reputation had grown so much that the waiting list for new patients stretched nearly 2 months ahead, something I could scarcely have imagined when I was struggling to pay rent. Mrs. Abernathy, a woman whose bright eyes belied a spine bent from decades of labor, greeted me with a grin as I entered the treatment room. "There she is," she announced cheerfully. "The miracle worker herself." I laughed, setting her chart aside. "The miracle was your persistence with those home exercises," I teased. "Nonsense," she replied, waving her weathered hand. "My grandson insists you're the best in Denver, and that boy researches everything before he believes it." As I guided her through her final stretches, I caught a glimpse of myself in the wall mirror. The defensive posture and tense shoulders that had once defined me were gone. I carried myself taller now, grounded in self-worth. Later that afternoon, I welcomed 3 new graduates into my mentorship program. They gathered eagerly around the conference table, their eyes bright with the same hunger that had fueled my own midnight study sessions years ago. "The most important lesson I can give you isn't just about technique," I told them, perched on the edge of the table. "It's about knowing your value. In this work, you will give endlessly. Make sure what you give is respected." 1. After they departed, I reviewed the figures from our pro bono initiative serving patients with limited means. The program now made up 15% of our practice. A year ago, that number would have terrified me. Now it filled me with pride and purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah, my closest friend and head of our professional women's group. "Ready for tonight? It's your turn to share." A flutter of nerves rippled through me. Tonight, for the first time, I would tell my full story publicly, including the battles with my family. The idea was both frightening and freeing. Before heading out, I checked my personal email. Mom had sent pictures from her volunteer work at the community garden, her 3rd message that week that carried no demands. Small, tentative steps, but genuine ones. Dad's name, however, was still missing from my inbox. Some wounds take longer to heal. A separate email caught my eye. Autumn's announcement of her first corporate job. One completely unconnected to my clinic. For once, her message lacked excessive exclamation points. A quiet signal of growing maturity. That evening, the setting sun stretched shadows across Leah's home as I arrived for our monthly dinner. Unlike the suffocating formality of my parents' dining room, Leah's table overflowed with laughter, easy conversation, and dishes passed family style. My chosen family of colleagues and friends surrounded me, their warmth a balm to old scars. Melissa raised her glass. "To Elowen," she said with conviction, "who showed us that standing firm isn't selfish, it's survival." Applause filled the room, washing over me like healing rain. I thought of the scholarship I had created for physical therapy students from disadvantaged backgrounds, the workshop on setting healthy boundaries I would lead next month, and the upcoming launch of our specialized vestibular rehabilitation program. When dinner ended, I stepped onto Leah's porch. The mountains rose dark and unshakable against the horizon, as steady and immovable as the boundaries I had finally learned to keep. "You look at peace," Leah said, joining me. "I am," I admitted with a deep breath. At last, I understood that I could heal others without sacrificing myself in the process. Tomorrow, I would treat an elderly man with the same compassion I had once reserved for family members who had drained me without thanks. The difference was clear. He would look me in the eye and say thank you, and in that moment, I would know I was seen. "I'm Elowen Bennett," I whispered toward the mountains, my voice firm and steady, "and I heal those who truly value the healing."